Hello everyone, this is Donna. If any foreigners are only willing to rely on Wuhan Diary to understand China's anti-epidemic effort, it'll be a huge betrayal of Wuhan and the Chinese people who have paid a huge price during this fight. As of now, Wuhan Diary has been listed on Amazon from the very same day when Wuhan reopened the city. At the same time, Wuhan Diary was nominated for Nobel Prize. We hope to use a combination of English and Chinese video to prevent foreigners overseas from being manipulated by Fangfang and joining the anti-China forces and having distorted views on China. So, I'm calling out to you guys. If you have a foreign friend, I hope you can forward this video to him or her and let him know the truth. In order to proactively fight the public opinion war of anti-China using the Wuhan Diary, we have to take preventative measures. On the first day of unblocking Wuhan, the writer Fangfang's diary was translated to English and German, and also is published on Amazon for pre-sale. Her 60 articles, also known as the Wuhan Diary, were also questioned and scolded by Chinese netizens. Indeed, there are 1,000 Hamlets in 1,000 people's eyes, but each Hamlet is a tragedy. As a writer, Fangfang knows this really well, no matter how weird the writing angle is. As long as the basic writing method is miserable, it will resonate with people and many people will applaud. From the perspective of communication, only bad news is considered news. In a nutshell, the Wuhan Diary is using tragic and emotional rumors to gain eyeballs, while naming this book as a diary in order to create an illusion of objective truth for the purpose of making money. On the first day of Wuhan reopening, the diary went on sale overseas on Amazon, saying that there's no team marketing behind this. It is just a coincidence. I'm afraid that no one will believe this. At the end of March, Fangfang just completed the very last article of Wuhan Diary, and within 2 weeks, the book completed a series of rigorous tasks, including translation, English and German versions, editing, proofreading, book completion, and publication on Amazon. Writers who have published books will understand that this speed is unbelievable. At this speed, only the Western anti-China forces, who are politically correct, and the interest groups behind it can achieve such high efficiency. And her Weibo on March the 19th verified this, that she wrote this diary on invitation. We can just see how badly the Western anti-China forces want Wuhan Diary as a weapon of the public opinion war when we look at how Western media reported this book. Under the Western media propaganda, the subtitle of this book is Reports from the Source of the Epidemic Center. There is no doubt that this book will become the authority statement of Wuhan epidemic origin story for those who are preparing to spread the rumors and discredit China. In the eyes of the foreigners, no matter how hard the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs tries to use facts to reason, it may not be as trustworthy as the writing of a writer in Wuhan. We can get a clue about what Western media want to use this book for just by how Amazon introduced this book. It writes, social injustice, corruption, abuse, and the systematic political problems which impeded the response to the epidemic. There are also statements like this: blending the eerie and the dystopian, the profound and the quotidian. Wuhan Diary is a remarkable record of our times and a unique look at life in confinement in an authoritarian nation. Well, China needs to be accountable to the world for failing to contain the virus. The advent of this book made Trump, who shouted Chinese virus, even more confident. Maybe one day at a press conference in White House, you might see him saying, "Oh, I learned from a Chinese writer's book that the situation in Wuhan is worse than that reported from China." Tom Zhou, the former director of the U.S. Naval Intelligence Center, once said, "Drawing Chinese celebrity writers is an operation that began as early as the 1970s. These people are really easy to buy. It's as simple as posting their articles on important pages in well-known overseas publications. Can't be signed or appear under a pen name. But the remuneration for the manuscript is very impressive." Under normal circumstances, Fangfang couldn't easily leave her home and just walk on the street during the epidemic. Neither did she volunteer nor send supplies to those in need that she requires to go in and out of hospitals and isolation points. So, where did her factual story come from? Fangfang was caught rumoring many times. In the Wuhan Diary, for example, a female nurse was written dead. She said that she heard that a female nurse came to aid Wuhan from the Guangxi province had suddenly fainted on the floor, and unfortunately, after having been rescued, had died at the age of 28. Fangfang did not confirm the reliability of the source, and published an article that same night about the event. But the nurse did not die. After the diary entry was published that night, the hospital came forward to refute the rumors. Most of the events outlined by Fangfang were heard from so-called various internal channels. For example, she wrote in the diary, "A picture came from one of my doctor friends. There were many unowned mobile phones thrown on the funeral floor, and their owners have already turned to ashes." At first glance, what does this look like? Doesn't it look like a Nazi concentration camp? Coupled with the controversy and turmoil caused by the closure of Wuhan, Fangfang's infamous diary in Wuhan was born. However, when she was asked for the photos from the funeral, she said that she wanted to protect her friend's privacy and could not hand over the photos. Obviously, she does not want to pay for her rumors. A so-called diary is to record the situation of the day. Whatever you hear and feel, whether the situation is changed later on, is not reflected in the diary of the day. Also, Fangfang did not update or correct any content that was inconsistent with the facts afterwards. In the diary, Fangfang wrote that these well-compensated doctors who had made huge mistakes did not pay for what they have done wrong. However, in actual fact, these doctors who gave misdiagnosis early on have now been held accountable. This diary, which contains detailed information about the epidemic in Wuhan, does not include this information at all. In addition, regarding person-to-person spread, doctors must be responsible for the misdiagnosis. But when the epidemic response in China is compared with the Western governance, China can be evaluated with excellence. If using the misdiagnosis from early on to conclude that China did a terrible job during the epidemic, then let's see how many mistakes Trump has made.
You know, in theory, when it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away. I hope that's true. Whatever happens, we're totally prepared. You don't want to see panic, because there's no reason to be panicked. It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear. And this is their new hoax. Because there's no reason to panic at all.
I think it's very safe, yeah. I think it's very safe.
And won't even go to a doctor or a hospital. It'll get better. You can't be a politician and shake hands.
And we're prepared, and we're doing a great job with it. And be calm.
Most of the information from the Wuhan Diary is based on what she heard from someone. As a non-professional, Fangfang really likes to interpret policies and data in her diary. This raw interpretation is not only mixed with personal feelings, but it is also very easy to distort the public opinion. Fangfang said that it's hard to understand the pursuit of number 0. We don't have to take such a small gap too seriously. She's referring to the amount of patients that are gaining every day. Fangfang has been trying to establish a civil and official opposition using her own influence to speak to the public about her own logic while disregarding science. The harsh system will either tell the truth or be fired, she says in her diary. It is unfounded, but she has been venting her dissatisfaction with the government. Fangfang's position is obvious, which is against the Chinese government by using rumors. Here is another example about what she heard in her so-called diary. If we summarize the common vocabularies in the diary below, you can find that this is not non-fiction writing at all. Of course, Fangfang's biggest problem is not her ambiguous rumors, but the biggest problem is her selective blindness. In her diary, she interpreted the disaster as a human fault. She believes that the price paid for the closure of the city is far higher than the harm of the virus itself. Wuhan Diary didn't see the deadly struggles of the medical staff. It did not see the experts who constantly educated the public about the epidemic prevention. Nor did she see the CCTV news being updated every single day in real time. She didn't see the heavily criticized city closure as a solution to control the virus was also followed by the Western countries at the end. Possibly Fangfang's TV was broken and the internet was down. We can take a look at Weibo, the Chinese Twitter, to see Chinese people's thoughts about the Wuhan Diary. As a millennial, at first, I respected you, but now I can't. Regarding the Wuhan Diary, there has never been a dispute being politically left or right, but a dispute between the old and the new. No matter how you write, complain, or hate, it doesn't matter. The future of this country is always us, and you are just an old lady who has been eliminated by time. How would the history evaluate you? We are the ones who will be writing it. The knife you handed to the foreign enemies today will hurt 1.4 billion people, and we will get back at you one by one in the future. The Chinese government didn't do anything wrong to you, Fangfang, and now the entire nation condemns you. Fangfang is so resourceful. In just a matter of a few months, the English and the German versions of Wuhan Diary have come out and are now in pre-sale on Amazon. HarperCollins must be published only after you authorized it. And Chairman Fangfang, who invited you to write this, an American? We all misunderstood Fangfang. The English version is the original one. Fangfang is only a translator who made the Chinese version on the internet. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs is working hard at bringing justice back to the Chinese people, and Fangfang will hit the country into the abyss with one single pen. You guys can actually see this very clearly. In fact, Chinese people still see things very clearly. All of Fangfang's actions and intentions behind them are seen clearly by the eyes of the netizens. I also hope that the rest of the world can view this political event from the perspective of an ordinary citizen in China. After all, we're all ordinary people who want to live a life in peace. We don't want to participate in politics too much, and that has nothing to do with our lives. It's just because Fangfang went overboard too much. This is an old lady who grew up reading scar literature, counting the scars of her own soul, suffering from the aftermath of the Cultural Revolution for years. She challenged the younger generation on the internet, thinking that she could win the youth over just by scolding the government system. Instead, she was beaten by the young. Fangfang's tactics of labeling, which she had learned during the Cultural Revolution, is no longer effective today. She labels the Chinese younger generation as wolf warriors and Chinese 50 Cent Army. Her literary work lacks useful vocabulary and knowledge, just as her life lacks spirit. The younger generation is not afraid of this labeling tactic at all. Fangfang is a reflection of herself being stuck in the past. Young people see a more authentic and objective world. They are very confident in China, which is different from the previous generation, and they are the ones building this country and managing this country. Wuhan was unlocked on April the 8th. China's epidemic is coming to an end. However, the world had just started with the epidemic. When the Western countries were hit by the epidemic, the best response they could come up with was to transfer the contradiction to China, finding a scapegoat. This was done in World War I and World War II. The way to shift the contradiction this time is to increase argument that China should be responsible for the COVID-19. Some people in the United States, Britain, and even India have demanded China to apologize and compensate for the epidemic. They disregarded the research from the scientists of the science publication and didn't even look at the research achievements of those virus researchers around the world, but forcibly buckled down China as the original source of the virus, and China should be punished for all humanity. At this very moment, Fangfang handed them the best knife. Even this knife is a novel type of work mixed with fiction and lies. It will be used as evidence by people like Trump. In a healthy society, Fangfang should not be the only voice in the world. A writer in the name of Wuhan's conscience should not fictionally distort facts. Doing so would upset nearly tens of thousands of people in Wuhan who had made huge sacrifices in 76 days in order to control the epidemic. It would upset tens of thousands of medical staff who risked their own lives and worked so hard to support Wuhan. It would also upset 1.4 billion Chinese people who voluntarily stayed home in order to control the epidemic and had succeeded in less than 2 months.